The auction block stood in the scorching California sun, and Victoria Daniels felt every pair of eyes boring into her as she stood there with her hands bound. Her fate about to be decided by men who saw her as nothing more than damaged goods. San Francisco in 1872 was supposed to be a place of new beginnings, a city rebuilt from ashes and gold rush fever, but for Victoria, it had become her prison. Her father had died 6 months ago, leaving debts that swallowed their modest home whole. The creditors came knocking, and her uncle, a cruel man named Silas, had taken control of her fate. He decided the best way to settle what remained was to sell her contract as an indentured servant, and he made sure every potential buyer knew exactly why she was worth so little. "This here is Victoria Daniels," the auctioneer announced, his voice carrying across the crowd of rough men gathered in the yard behind the mercantile. "Healthy girl, 20 years old, can cook and clean, but I will warn you, she has got herself an affliction. Girl cannot speak proper. Stutters something terrible." Victoria felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She tried to keep her chin up, tried to maintain some shred of dignity, but it was difficult when you were being sold like livestock. Her dark hair hung in a simple braid down her back, and her brown eyes scanned the crowd, looking for any hint of kindness. She found none. Most of the men looked at her with either pity or disgust, and some did not look at all, already turning away. $20, someone called out half-heartedly. $20. Come now, gentlemen, she may have trouble speaking, but she can work just fine. Do I hear 30? Silence fell over the crowd. Victoria felt tears threatening to spill, but she blinked them back. She would not cry, not here. Not in front of these people. "Going once for $20, the auctioneer said, sounding disappointed. $200. The voice came from the back of the crowd, deep and steady. Every head turned, including Victoria's. A tall man stepped forward, his boots kicking up dust as he moved through the parting crowd. He wore typical cowboy attire, a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, dusty pants, and a hat that shaded his face. But as he drew closer, Victoria could see his features clearly. He had strong, weathered features, a jaw covered in several days of stubble, and eyes the color of stormy skies. He looked to be in his mid-20s, maybe 26 or 27, with the kind of build that came from hard work and harder living. $200. The auctioneer repeated, his eyes lighting up. "Well now, that is more like it. Sir, you understand the girl's condition." "I heard you the first time," the man said, his voice carrying an edge. He looked directly at Victoria, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. It was not pity she saw there, nor disgust. It was something else entirely, something she could not quite name. "Anyone want to bid higher?" the auctioneer called out, but the crowd remained silent. $200 was far more than anyone had expected to pay. "Sold to the gentleman for $200. The man stepped up onto the platform and paid the auctioneer in cash, counting out the bills with steady hands. Then he turned to Victoria and pulled a knife from his belt. She flinched instinctively, but he simply cut the ropes binding her wrists. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let us get out of here." Victoria rubbed her sore wrists and followed him down from the platform, acutely aware of every eye still watching them. The man led her to a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. He helped her up onto the seat without a word, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. They rode in silence for several minutes, leaving the crowded streets of San Francisco behind. Victoria kept stealing glances at the man beside her, trying to understand what had just happened. Why had he paid so much for her? What did he want? Her hands twisted nervously in her lap. "My name is Victoria," she finally managed to say, hating how the words stumbled over her tongue. The man glanced at her, and for the first time she saw the hint of a smile on his lips. "I know," the auctioneer said. "My name is Daniel Greyson, but most folks call me Daniel. WH, why did you be by me?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, guiding the horses around a bend in the road. They were heading into the hills now, away from the city. "I've got a ranch about 10 miles outside of town. Been running it by myself for the past year since my father passed. Could use the help, and I figured you could use a place where people would not judge you for something you cannot control." Victoria stared at him, surprised by his straightforward honesty. But $200. "Money is just money," Daniel said with a shrug. "Besides, I did well with the cattle drive this spring. I can afford it." They fell into silence again, but it felt less heavy now. Victoria studied the landscape around them, the rolling hills dotted with oak trees, the endless blue sky above. It was beautiful country, wild and open in a way that made her heart ache with something she could not name. Is it just you at the R Ranch?" she asked after a while. "Got a few ranch hands who come by during busy seasons, but mostly, yes, it is just me. The main house has plenty of room, though. You will have your own space." Victoria nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. She had been afraid, terribly afraid, of what kind of man would buy her contract. But Daniel seemed decent, at least so far. Time would tell. The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, a sprawling property with a large main house built of wood and stone, a barn, several outbuildings, and corrals filled with horses and cattle. It was more impressive than Victoria had expected, clearly the result of years of hard work. Daniel pulled the wagon up in front of the house and helped Victoria down. She stood there uncertainly, clutching the small bag that contained everything she owned in the world. "Come inside," Daniel said, leading the way up the porch steps. "I will show you around, get you settled." The inside of the house was clean but clearly lived in by a bachelor. The furniture was sturdy and practical, the floors swept but needing a good scrubbing. The kitchen was well stocked, and there was a large fireplace in the main room. Daniel led her down a hallway and opened a door. "This was my sister's room before she got married and moved to Oregon with her husband. You can stay here." Victoria stepped inside and felt her throat tighten with emotion. The room was lovely, with a real bed covered in a quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the valley. It was more than she had hoped for, more than she had dared to dream. Thank you," she whispered, and this time the words came out almost smoothly. Daniel nodded. "You are welcome. Take some time to settle in. When you are ready, come out to the kitchen and we can talk about the arrangement." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Victoria sat down on the bed and let herself cry just a little, not from sadness but from relief. She had been so afraid, so certain that her life was over. But maybe, just maybe, this could be a new beginning. After washing her face and putting away her few belongings, Victoria made her way to the kitchen. Daniel was there, putting together a simple meal of bread, cheese, and cold meat. He looked up when she entered and gestured to the table. "Sit, you must be hungry." They ate together, the silence comfortable now. When they finished, Daniel poured them both coffee and leaned back in his chair. "I want to make something clear," he said, his gray eyes meeting hers. "I bought your contract, yes, but I am not looking for a slave or anything like that. I need help with the house and the cooking, things I am not very good at. In return, you will have a safe place to live, food, and a small wage. When your contract is up in 3 years, you will be free to go wherever you want with money in your pocket. Does that sound fair?" Victoria felt her eyes widen. "Why you would pay me, of course. You will be working, will you not? But most people, they would not." "I am not most people," Daniel said firmly. "And there is one more thing, that stutter of yours. I do not care about it. You take all the time you need to say what you want to say. I will listen to every word, however long it takes." "Understood." Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes again. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Her whole life, people had grown impatient with her, interrupted her, spoken over her, or simply ignored her altogether. Even her own father, who had loved her, had sometimes struggled to hide his frustration. Thank you," she managed to say, and Daniel just nodded. The days turned into weeks, and Victoria found herself settling into a routine at the ranch. She woke early to make breakfast, spent her mornings cleaning and mending, and her afternoons preparing dinner. Daniel was gone most of the day, working with the cattle and horses, but they ate their evening meals together and talked. At first, Victoria was hesitant to speak much, still self-conscious about her stutter. But Daniel kept his promise. He never interrupted, never showed impatience. He would wait, his gray eyes attentive, until she finished whatever she was trying to say. And slowly, gradually, she found herself relaxing around him. "How long have you been running the R ranch?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "My father started it about 20 years ago," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair. "I grew up here, learned everything from him. When he died last year, it became mine. My sister did not want it. She wanted the city life, wanted to see the world. Cannot say I blame her." "Did you ever get lonely?" Daniel considered this. "Sometimes. But the work keeps me busy and I like the quiet. Cities are too loud, too many people all crammed together. Out here, a man can breathe." Victoria understood that. Despite her difficult circumstances, she found herself appreciating the peace of the ranch, the wide open spaces, the way the stars looked at night without the city lights to dim them. As autumn arrived, painting the hills in shades of gold and red, Victoria noticed changes in herself. She was healthier, her skin glowing from good food and fresh air. She was also more confident, finding her voice in small ways. Her stutter was still there, of course, but it seemed less severe somehow, as if Daniel's patience had created a safe space where she did not feel the need to rush. She also noticed Daniel in ways she had not before. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he worked. The rare smile that transformed his usually serious face. The gentle way he handled the horses, speaking to them in low, soothing tones. She found herself looking forward to their evening conversations, to the comfortable silence that sometimes fell between them. One October morning, Victoria was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. She looked up to see Daniel riding hard toward the house, and her heart jumped with alarm. Something was wrong. Daniel dismounted quickly and strode toward her, his face tight with concern. "We have got a problem. There is a storm coming, a bad one. I need to get the cattle moved to the lower pasture before it hits. Can you help me?" "Of course," Victoria said without hesitation. Daniel looked at her appraisingly. "Have you ever ridden a horse?" "And not really, but I can learn." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Good, come on." He saddled a gentle mare named Daisy and helped Victoria mount. Her first time on a horse was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Daniel stayed close, teaching her the basics quickly, and then they were off toward the upper pasture where the cattle grazed. The sky had turned an ominous gray, and the wind was picking up, carrying the scent of rain. Daniel moved with practiced efficiency, using his horse to herd the cattle while calling out instructions to Victoria. She did her best to follow, despite her inexperience. It was hard work, and more than once she nearly fell from the saddle, but she gritted her teeth and kept going. They managed to get the cattle moved just as the first drops of rain began to fall. Within minutes, It turned into a downpour. Daniel grabbed Daisy's reins and led both horses toward a nearby line shack, a small shelter used by ranch hands during cattle drives. Inside, they were both soaked to the bone and breathing hard. Daniel quickly got a fire going in the small stove while Victoria stood dripping, her teeth chattering. "Here," Daniel said, pulling a blanket from a trunk in the corner. He wrapped it around her shoulders, his hands lingering for just a moment. Their eyes met, and Victoria felt something shift between them, something electric that had been building for months. Thank you," she whispered. "You did well today," Daniel said, his voice rough. "Most women would have refused to help or panicked. You kept your head. I did not want to let you down. You could never let me down, Victoria." The way he said her name, soft and warm, made her heart race. They stood there, close together in the small space, the sound of rain hammering on the roof. Victoria became acutely aware of every detail, the water dripping from Daniel's hair, the way his wet shirt clung to his chest, the intensity in his gray eyes. "Victoria," Daniel said quietly, "I need to tell you something." What? "When I saw you on that auction block, I felt something I had never felt before. Anger, yes, at the way they were treating you, but also something else. A pull, like I was meant to be there that day. And these past few months, having you here, talking with you every evening, watching you bloom like a flower that finally got enough sun and water, I have come to care for you, deeply." Victoria's breath caught. Daniel, you do not have to say anything," he continued. "I know the situation is complicated. I know you might see me as just the man who bought your contract, nothing more. But I wanted you to know how I feel. I wanted to be honest with you." "I do not see you that way," Victoria said, the words tumbling out despite her stutter. "Why you saved me. Why you have been kind to me when no one else was. Why you listen when I speak, really listen. Why you make me feel like I am matter." "You do matter," Daniel said fiercely. He reached out and cupped her face gently with his hand. "You matter so much, Victoria." She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. When she opened them again, Daniel was closer, his face inches from hers. "See, can I tell you something? Always. I will listen to every word you say, remember." A small smile tugged at her lips. "I think I am falling in love with you." Daniel's expression softened into something beautiful. "I know I am falling in love with you." He kissed her then, soft and gentle, asking rather than demanding. Victoria kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his wet shirt, anchoring herself to him. The kiss deepened, and she felt warmth spread through her entire body, chasing away the chill of the rain. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably wait out the storm here. The horses need rest anyway." They spent the afternoon in the line shack, talking and stealing kisses, wrapped in blankets by the fire. Victoria had never felt so happy, so safe, so cherished. Daniel asked her about her life before, and she told him everything. About her mother who had died when she was young, her father who had tried his best but struggled after his wife's death, the way her stutter had made her a target for cruelty, especially after she became an orphan. "Your uncle should be horsewhipped for what he did," Daniel said angrily. "Selling you like that. But if he had not, would never have met you." Daniel pulled her closer. "I suppose that is true, still makes me angry though." "I am not angry anymore," Victoria said softly. "I am just grateful." When the storm finally passed, they rode back to the ranch house in the golden light of late afternoon. Everything looked fresh and clean, washed by the rain. Victoria felt like she was seeing the world through new eyes, everything brighter and more beautiful because of the love growing in her heart. Their relationship deepened as the weeks passed. Daniel courted her properly, despite the unusual circumstances of their situation. He brought her wildflowers from the hills, taught her to ride properly, sat with her on the porch every evening. He told her stories of his childhood, his dreams for the future of the ranch, his hopes and fears. Victoria opened up in ways she never had before. With Daniel's patient encouragement, she found her stutter bothering her less and less. Oh, it was still there, probably always would be, but it felt less like a prison now. Daniel had taught her that her words had value, that she had value, stutter or not. One evening in late November, as the first hints of winter touched the air, Daniel took Victoria's hand across the dinner table. "I have been thinking," he said. "Your contract has got more than 2 years left on it." Victoria's heart sank. Was he going to send her away? Had she misread everything? Daniel must have seen the fear in her eyes because he quickly continued. "I want to buy out your contract, not to hold over you but to end it completely. Set you free." What? "I want you to be free, Victoria, free to make your own choices, free to stay or go as you please. Because what I am going to ask you next, I want you to be able to answer without any obligation, without feeling like you owe me anything." He stood and came around the table, then got down on one knee. Victoria's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. "Victoria Daniels," Daniel said, his voice steady but his eyes showing his nervousness. "I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your courage. I love the way you hum when you cook. I love your smile. I even love your stutter because it is part of you, and every part of you is precious to me. Will you marry me? Not as a servant or an obligation, but as my partner, my equal, my wife." Tears streamed down Victoria's face. "Why, yes," she said, the word coming out clear and strong. "Yes, I will marry you. I'll love you too, Daniel. So much." Daniel stood and swept her into his arms, kissing her soundly. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, he pulled a simple gold ring from his pocket and slid it onto her finger. "It was my mother's," he said. "My father gave it to me before he died, said to give it to the woman who stole my heart. That is you, Victoria. You stole my heart the moment I saw you." They were married 3 weeks later in a small church in San Francisco, with Daniel's sister, Emma, and her husband traveling from Oregon to attend. Emma was a kind woman with Daniel's same gray eyes, and she embraced Victoria warmly. "I am so happy my brother found you," Emma said as she helped Victoria get ready for the ceremony. "He has been alone too long, too serious. But with you I see him smile. I see him happy." The wedding was simple but beautiful. Victoria wore a dress of pale blue that Emma had brought as a gift, and Daniel wore his best suit. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, Victoria held her breath, half afraid her uncle would appear. But the moment passed quietly, and then Daniel was sliding another ring onto her finger, and she was sliding one onto his. "I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride." Daniel pulled Victoria close and kissed her tenderly, and the small gathering applauded. Victoria felt like her heart might burst with happiness. She was free. She was loved. She was home. Their wedding night was spent at a hotel in San Francisco, a luxury Daniel had insisted on. He was gentle and patient with Victoria, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. She had been nervous, but Daniel's love made everything beautiful. They talked late into the night, making plans for their future, dreaming together. "I want children someday," Victoria said, nestled against Daniel's chest. "I want to fill that house with love and laughter." "How many children?" Daniel asked, running his fingers through her loose hair. "At least 3, maybe 4, Daniel chuckled. "That sounds perfect, and I promise you, any child of ours who has a stutter or any other challenge will be loved and accepted completely." We will teach them that differences do not make someone less valuable." Victoria kissed his chest, right over his heart. "Why, you are a good man, Daniel Greyson. You make me want to be better, Victoria Greyson." They returned to the ranch the next day, beginning their life together as husband and wife. The winter was mild, and they spent the quiet months making plans for the ranch, for the future. Daniel taught Victoria the business side of ranching, showing her the books, explaining about breeding stock and market prices. He valued her opinions, asked for her input, treated her as the partner he had promised she would be. In the spring, they learned Victoria was expecting their first child. Daniel was overjoyed, immediately becoming protective and attentive. Victoria bloomed with pregnancy, her happiness evident in every smile, every laugh. She still stuttered, of course, but it had become so much a part of their normal communication that neither of them noticed it much anymore. Their son was born on a warm September day in 1873, a healthy baby with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Daniel's father. Daniel cried when he held his son for the first time, overcome with emotion. "Look what we made," he whispered to Victoria as she lay exhausted but radiant in their bed. "Look at this perfect little person." "He is beautiful," Victoria agreed, watching her husband cradle their child with such tenderness. Thomas was followed by a daughter 2 years later whom they named Sarah. Then another son, James, 2 years after that. Each child was welcomed with joy, each one loved fiercely. And when it became clear that little James had inherited his mother's stutter, Victoria held him close and told him what his father had once told her. "Why your words matter, James. How you say them does not change their value. We will always listen." Daniel made the same promise to his son, and true to his word, he never showed impatience, never interrupted. He taught all their children by example that everyone deserved to be heard, that kindness and patience were strengths, not weaknesses. The years passed peacefully. The ranch prospered under Daniel and Victoria's joint management. They added more land, built a new barn, improved the breeding stock. But more importantly, they built a home filled with love and laughter, a place where everyone was accepted exactly as they were. Emma and her family visited regularly, and the cousins grew up close despite the distance. Daniel hired ranch hands who understood that the boss's wife was to be respected and listened to, stutter or not. Anyone who showed disrespect found themselves looking for work elsewhere quickly. Victoria became involved in the community as well, working with the church to help other women in difficult situations. She never forgot where she had come from, what it felt like to be judged and found wanting for something beyond her control. She used her position and Daniel's influence to make a difference, and she discovered she had a gift for helping others find their voices. One spring afternoon in 1883, Victoria and Daniel sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was 13 now, tall and serious like his father. Sarah was 11, with her mother's kind heart and her father's steady nature. James was 9, his stutter already much improved thanks to his parents' patient support and unconditional love. "Did you ever regret it?" Victoria asked, taking Daniel's hand. "Paying so much for me that day." Daniel turned to look at his wife, this woman who had transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. Her hair had a few threads of silver now, and fine lines crinkled around her eyes when she smiled, but she was more beautiful to him than ever. "Regret," he said softly. "Victoria, buying your contract was the best decision I ever made. $200. I would have paid $2,000, $20,000. You were worth everything I had and more. You still are." "I love you," Victoria said, the words coming easily after all these years of being truly heard. I love you too, and I will keep my promise for the rest of my life. I will listen to every word you say. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching their children and counting their blessings. The ranch stretched out before them, the land they had built together, the life they had created from ashes and auction blocks and unlikely beginnings. Thomas came running up to the porch. "Papa, can we go riding? I want to check the herd in the north pasture." "Ask your mother," Daniel said with a grin. Thomas turned to Victoria. "May we, Mama?" "Why, yes, but take your brother and sister with you, and be back before dark." The children whooped with excitement and ran toward the barn. Daniel and Victoria watched them go, their hearts full. "They are good children," Daniel said, "because they have a good mother. They have a good father, too." As the sun began to set, painting the California sky in shades of gold and pink, Victoria reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been sold because she stuttered, treated as damaged goods, worth less than whole. But Daniel had seen her value when no one else had. He had kept his promise to listen to every word she said, and in doing so, he had given her back her voice, her dignity, her very self. More than that, he had given her love. Real, deep, lasting love that had carried them through more than a decade of marriage and would carry them through decades more. They had built something beautiful together, something that would outlast them both in the children they raised and the love they shared. The stutter that had once defined her, that had caused her so much pain and shame, was now just one small part of who she was. She was also a wife, a mother, a rancher, a woman of strength and compassion. Daniel had helped her see that, and she had helped him open his heart to love and family in ways he never had before. As darkness fell, and the children returned, hungry and happy from their ride, the family gathered for dinner. The table was full of food Victoria had prepared, full of conversation and laughter and the kind of comfortable chaos that comes with children. Daniel caught Victoria's eye across the table and smiled, that special smile he reserved just for her. She smiled back, her heart overflowing with gratitude for this life, this man, these children. For second chances and patient love and promises kept. After the children were in bed, Daniel and Victoria stood on their porch again, looking up at the stars. Daniel wrapped his arms around his wife from behind, and she leaned back against him, perfectly content. "What are you thinking about?" Victoria asked. "About the day I met you," Daniel said. "About how I almost did not go to town that day. I had so much work to do. But something told me to go, and I am glad I listened. I am glad too. I was so scared that day, I know, but you were also brave. You held your head up. You did not let them break you. I would have broken if you had not come along." "No," Daniel said firmly. "You are stronger than you know, Victoria. You always were. I just helped you see it." They stood together in the peaceful night, two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love that could weather any storm. The ranch was quiet now, the cattle settled, the horses in their stalls, the children sleeping soundly in their beds. Years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges as they always do. There were difficult seasons when the rains did not come and the cattle suffered. There were illnesses and injuries, losses and sorrows. But through it all, Daniel and Victoria faced everything together, their love the anchor that kept them steady. Thomas grew into a fine young man who eventually took over more and more of the ranch operations, learning from his father just as Daniel had learned from his. He married a kind woman named Margaret, and they gave Daniel and Victoria their first grandchild, a little girl with bright eyes and a ready smile. Sarah became a teacher, finding her calling in educating children in San Francisco, though she came home often to visit. She never married, content with her work and her independence, but she was happy, and that was all her parents wanted for her. James, after struggling with his stutter throughout his childhood, became a passionate advocate for others who struggled with speech impediments. He traveled throughout California giving talks, writing articles, helping parents understand how to support their children. His own parents were his inspiration, the proof that acceptance and patience could transform lives. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised Victoria with a trip back to San Francisco, to the hotel where they had spent their wedding night. It had been renovated and updated, but the memories were still there. As they lay in bed that night, Victoria traced the lines of Daniel's face, memorizing features she knew as well as her own. They were both older now, gray threading through their hair, their bodies marked by years of hard work and life lived fully. But their love had only deepened with time. "TW 20 years, Victoria said softly. Sometimes it feels like why yesterday, sometimes it feels like forever." "Both," Daniel agreed. "The best 20 years of my life. And mine too, Daniel, I need to tell you something." His eyes focused on her, giving her his complete attention as he always had. "What is it? Thank you. For seeing me that day. For C caring enough to be bid. For K keeping your promise to L listen. You gave me a L life I never dreamed I could have." Daniel pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "You gave me the same thing. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You taught me what it means to truly live, to love with everything I have. You made me a better man. We made each other be better." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "We did." They fell asleep in each other's arms, just as they had done thousands of nights before, just as they would do thousands more. As the years moved into the 1890s, Daniel and Victoria began to slow down, letting Thomas run the ranch while they enjoyed their grandchildren and the life they had built. They had 4 grandchildren now, with a 5th on the way, and their house was often full of young voices and laughter. Victoria's stutter had actually improved significantly over the years, though it never disappeared completely. She no longer cared. It was part of her, and everyone who mattered accepted it without question. More importantly, she had learned that her voice had power, that her words mattered, that she mattered. Daniel developed a touch of arthritis in his hands, slowing him down but not stopping him. He still rode out to check the herds most days, still helped with the heavy work when Thomas would let him. He was proud of the ranch, proud of his family, but most of all, proud of his wife and the strength she had shown throughout their life together. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, their grandchildren playing in the yard just as their own children once had, Victoria felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. This was it. This was what life was meant to be. Not perfect, not without struggles or sorrows, but full of love and meaning and purpose. "Daniel," she said, and he turned to her with the same patient, loving expression he always wore when she spoke. "I was just thinking. If I could go back to that G girl on the auction B block and tell her what was C coming, I would not believe it. I would not believe that so much happiness was P possible." Daniel reached over and took her hand, their fingers interlocking automatically after so many years. "I would tell that cowboy who walked into town that day that he was about to meet the love of his life, that he was about to become the luckiest man alive." Victoria laughed, the sound warm and free. We are both lucky." "Yes, we are." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors, their granddaughter Emma, named after Daniel's sister, came running up to the porch. She was 7 years old, bright and energetic with Victoria's dark hair and Daniel's gray eyes. "Grandma, Grandpa, tell us the story," she begged. "Tell us how you met." The other grandchildren gathered around, all of them eager to hear the tale they never tired of. Daniel looked at Victoria, letting her decide. "Well," Victoria began, and the children settled in to listen. She told them the story, not hiding the difficult parts, but emphasizing the love and hope that had come from such unlikely beginnings. Daniel added details here and there, but mostly he just watched his wife, still marveling after all these years at her strength and grace. When the story was finished, little Emma hugged her grandmother tight. "I am glad that mean man sold you, Grandma. Otherwise you would not have met Grandpa." "And me too, sweetheart," Victoria said, stroking the child's hair. "Me too." The years continued their relentless march forward. Daniel and Victoria celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 40th. They buried Daniel's sister Emma, who passed peacefully in her sleep at age 70. They welcomed more grandchildren, then great-grandchildren. The ranch continued to prosper under Thomas's management, expanding and modernizing while still maintaining the heart and soul that Daniel and Victoria had built into it. Through it all, Daniel kept his promise. Whether Victoria's words came easily or struggled to break free, he listened to every single one. It had become so natural, so ingrained in who they were as a couple, that younger family members who had never known anything different could not imagine it being any other way. On a warm summer day in 1910, Daniel and Victoria sat together on their porch, now both in their late 50s, still healthy and active but definitely feeling their age. The ranch spread out before them, 3 generations of their family working together to keep it thriving. "See, can you believe it has been 38 years?" Victoria asked, shaking her head in wonder. "Best 38 years possible," Daniel replied, as he always did. Victoria turned to look at her husband, this man who had changed her entire life with one bid at an auction, who had loved her unconditionally every single day since. "I'll love you, Daniel Greyson, with everything I am." "I love you too, Victoria Greyson. With everything I am and everything I will ever be." They sat together as the sun set once again, hands linked, hearts intertwined, grateful for every moment they had been given. Their love story had started in the most unlikely of ways, born from an auction block and $200, and a cowboy who saw value where others saw only fault. But it had grown into something beautiful and lasting, something that would echo through generations. They had proven that love could overcome anything: prejudice, hardship, uncertainty, fear. They had proven that patience and acceptance could heal wounds and build bridges. They had proven that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. As darkness fell and the stars began to appear in the vast California sky, Daniel helped Victoria to her feet. They walked inside together, still hand in hand after all these years, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, knowing they would face it together. The house was warm and welcoming, full of memories and love. Photographs lined the walls, chronicling their life together. Their wedding day, the births of their children, family gatherings, ranch milestones. Each picture told a story, and together they formed the narrative of a life well lived. That night, lying in bed, Victoria rested her head on Daniel's chest, listening to his heartbeat, the sound that had comforted her through countless nights. "Do you remember what you said to me? That first day in the L-line shack during the storm?" "I said a lot of things that day," Daniel murmured, running his fingers through her hair, now heavily streaked with silver but still beautiful to him. "Why, you said I am mattered, that I am mattered so much, and no one had ever said that to me before. It was true then, and it is true now. You matter, Victoria, you always have. She tilted her head up to kiss him softly. Why you gave me more than a home, Daniel. You gave me myself. You gave me permission to be exactly who I am. You were always exactly who you were meant to be. I just made sure you knew it. They drifted off to sleep together, secure in their love, grateful for their life, content with the legacy they had built. Their children were happy and successful. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren were thriving. The ranch would continue for generations, a testament to what two people could build when they loved and respected each other completely. The story of how they met became family legend, passed down through the years. Future generations would tell their own children about the grandmother who stuttered, and the grandfather who loved her not despite it but including it, as part of the whole person she was. They would tell about the auction block, and the $200, and the promise to listen to every word. And they would understand that real love, lasting love, was built not on perfection but on acceptance. Not on changing someone but on cherishing them exactly as they are. Not on grand gestures alone but on the small, daily acts of patience and kindness that add up to a lifetime. Daniel and Victoria Greyson lived into their 70s, blessed with good health and surrounded by family. When Daniel finally passed in 1925, Victoria held his hand as he drew his last breath, whispering how much she loved him, how grateful she was for every moment they had shared. Victoria followed him 2 years later, dying peacefully in her sleep, a smile on her face. Their children found her in the morning, still beautiful even in death, her hand resting on Daniel's pillow as if reaching for him one last time. They were buried together on a hill overlooking the ranch, their graves side by side for eternity just as they had been in life. The headstone was simple but meaningful, bearing both their names, their birth and death dates, and a single inscription that Thomas had chosen. He listened. She spoke. Together they loved. The ranch continued on, passed down through the generations, but the heart of it, the love that Daniel and Victoria had built into its very foundation, remained. Their great-great-grandchildren would ride the same hills their ancestors had ridden, work the same land, and carry forward the lessons of acceptance, patience, and unconditional love. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun set over the California hills painting the sky in gold and pink, family members swore they could feel the presence of Daniel and Victoria, still keeping watch over the land and the people they had loved so much, still together even beyond death, their love story eternal and unending. From an auction block where a young woman stood trembling, sold because she stuttered, to a grave on a hill where two lovers rested together for eternity, their story had come full circle. But the legacy they left behind, the love they had shared and passed down, the acceptance they had modeled and taught, continued on, touching lives and changing hearts for generations to come. Because Daniel had seen worth where others saw only fault. Because he had bid when others had turned away. Because he had promised to listen to every word Victoria said, and had kept that promise every single day of their life together. And because Victoria had found the courage to speak, to love, to trust again after being broken and sold and discarded. Together, they had proven that love could overcome anything, that patience could heal wounds, that acceptance could transform lives. They had built something beautiful and lasting, something that would echo through time long after they were gone. And in the end, that was the greatest gift two people could leave behind. A love story that inspired, that taught, that showed others what was possible when two hearts found each other and chose, every single day, to honor and cherish what they had found. The Wild West of 1872 had been a hard place, unforgiving and brutal in many ways. But it had also been a place where new beginnings were possible, where two unlikely souls could find each other and build something extraordinary. Daniel and Victoria had taken their chance, had built their love on a foundation of respect and patience and daily kindness, and it had sustained them through nearly 60 years of marriage. Their story, beginning with those fateful words, "I will listen to every word you say," had become a testament to the transformative power of love, acceptance, and seeing the value in another human being that others had overlooked. It was a story that would be told and retold, inspiring others to look deeper, to listen more carefully, to love more completely. And somewhere, perhaps in the whisper of wind through the California hills or in the warmth of the setting sun, Daniel and Victoria's love continued on, eternal and unbreakable, a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who came after them, proving that the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most beautiful endings.